Welcome to the Accelerating Operational Performance podcast. I'm Greg Schinkel from Unique Training and Development and Frontline Leadership Systems. And you know that our mission here is always to give you some good ideas that might accelerate some of the projects and results you're trying to achieve in your business and also help you in your career progression as you go along. And this episode is actually brought to you by our new series of Frontline Leadership courses. Most people will recognize us for our Frontline Leadership program, which is a 6 half-day or 3 full-day program. We now actually have 3 different programs to expand on that content. So what used to be our Frontline Leadership program is now called the Frontline Leadership Strength and Essentials program. Then we have a second program called Frontline Leadership Drive Performance, and a third program called Amplify Impact. So, of course, if any of those courses would benefit you and your organization, you should reach out to us at uniquedevelopment.com. Now, my guest today, I'm super excited to welcome James Ott from Regal Rexnord. And James, I've had the pleasure of having some conversations with him, and I want to tell you a little bit more about him. I wanted to do it justice, so I have some notes that I'm going to refer to. James Ott is a dynamic leader who has 10 years in industry between General Electric, Johnson Controls, and Regal Rexnord, focused on continuous improvement and leadership, specifically developing servant leadership and high-performance cultures. He's got a proven track record in manufacturing and operations, consistently guiding teams to achieve next-level results. And he does it all with Regal Rexnord, a global powerhouse that's quite literally keeping the world moving as a leader in powertrain, conveyance, and HVAC systems. You might be surprised to learn just how Regal Rexnord touches our everyday lives, from the HVAC systems that keep us comfortable to the conveyor belts that power our online shopping. We're fortunate to be tapping into his experience. Welcome to the podcast, James.
Hey, Greg, really appreciate the opportunity. It's great to talk to you today.
Yeah, no, you know, I asked James just before we were going to start the podcast, I said, which part of this Regal Rexnord empire do you belong to? And James, the current division that he's working with, does a lot of small motors. In healthcare, you might find them in a drill that they might use in the operating room, but you know, other divisions would sell the motors that might be in one of the drills that you'd use on a construction site or in your home. So that's the specific area that James is currently working in. And of course, if you want to contact Regal Rexnord, you can do that through regalrexnord.com. And of course, James Ott can be discovered on LinkedIn. So James, as we get underway here, what I'm interested in is, in most people's career journey, at least in the starting phases, you're not sure about your own confidence level sometimes until you discover that kind of first success that makes you go, you know what, I might be onto something here. I might be actually having the confidence that I need. And it's not just at that point bravado, it's actually become more concrete. I'm just wondering, is there a project that you think of back in your early time in your career when you finally kind of locked in and said, I think I've got something here. I think I've discovered what I'm supposed to do in life?
Yeah, and ironically, it started with falling on my face, if I'm honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
So I came up a little bit in sales before I ended up graduating from university and getting into supply chain and operations. And my first role at GE, I was working on a tool for my sourcing team, and we were trying to figure out, like, how do we pull the right data out of our systems to do daily management and be effective as a team, and of what we're looking at, and getting to a standard script of what performance is and what data we're looking at to drive our performance. And so my big learning and aha was, I thought I had the greatest tool that was ever developed. It was, simple. It was easy to understand, point, click. In 15 minutes, you could have all of your supplier updates out to your supply base, and then you're spending the rest of your week really interacting with your suppliers and working on the kind of critical things to bring material on site. And ironically, I got exactly zero input from my teammates. And so I got exactly zero adoption.
Because they weren't involved in it. So you had this great tool that's
No.
going to make your lives better, make all of our lives better, and then they didn't adopt it. So what was, I mean, I think I know what your key takeaway was, but what did you really get from that sort of thing that you thought was going to be your crowning achievement that turned into a big flop? But I'm guessing you learned something really important from that.
Yeah, so the nice thing was this is like 6 months into my career, and I get this feedback of if I am on a journey by myself, I will be at the goal line by myself. And if I bring my teammates along with me, then we're all going to that goal line, and we're probably going to score a whole lot more than if I'm going alone.
Yeah.
Right. And so the end result is really a more dynamic tool, and something 7, 8, 9 years later was actually still in
Wow.
process, and continually tweaked and developed, but the essence of that process still remained. Yeah.
It's interesting to me how many times just being smart about something and trying to figure it out on your own, when you involve others, they feel more connected to whatever the solution is, and then they stand behind it and want to see it be successful. Whereas the other one becomes sort of like a show me moment, like, oh yeah, you think you're so smart? Let's see how this thing works. Um, so when you, so that actually was your impactful learning. Knowing that tell me a little bit about the journey that you've been on in terms of lean and continuous improvement. First of all, what sparked your interest there? Kind of what was part of your journey?
Yeah. So again, that first kind of experience at GE kicked off my journey. Right. So I was blessed really with some incredible leaders from a corporate mentorship side of things, as well as direct in the locations I was in. So, when I was at GE, I was spoiled with opportunity and spoiled with exposure. And, so with that, my first exposure was really around leader standard work. And we had this process that was every week for updating and providing insights to our production team on material availability, when materials were scheduled to arrive, and any potential risks to the production schedule. And one week I wasn't fully prepared for that, and I was more focused on that tool development that I was talking about
Yeah.
before, and less focused on the tactical execution of my role. And so I had a really good mentor who wrote a message that I actually keep still today, that explained to me. I had no idea the concept of leader standard work, but really was, how do you start to get an idea of where your priorities are and what you're working on, so that you ensure that your top priority items are always prioritized and focused on first.
Hmm.
And then you go into your next level continuous improvement and more of your strategic items, and start to balance how you look at both your strategic objectives with your tactical.
Yeah. So,
So
so
leader standard work really kicked that off for me.
right. So that gave you a much deeper respect for the key principles of lean. But now part of your role is
Yeah.
also to get other people to follow
Yes.
along like that. And so continue on, like what other parts of your journey? So that was helpful of getting you indoctrinated into the value of it and aligned with it.
Yep.
How did it evolve from there?
So once I got introduced to it, then it became kind of a way of life. I started to do, independent study, understand the Toyota way, and Toyota production system, and different principles of what lean is, getting really into the culture of things.
Hmm.
So my background, I was a highly competitive athlete in different areas. I
Hmm.
loved baseball, and really was more, my dream was to be a coach, not a player.
Yeah.
Right. So when I saw this idea of lean and respect for people, and having both a high expectation with a kind of caring mentality, and seeing that balance, was really the thing that motivated me to really get involved and get deeper to it. So really for me, it was less about tools you develop over time, you get hard skill set, but that culture of lean and respect was really what brought me in, and kind of sold me long term.
Yeah, I was. We talked to one of our own colleagues that helps companies with lean implementation, he also used the word respect. And he said, actually, if you look at Toyota Production System more closely, it starts with respect first, and then it's the relentless pursuit of continuous improvement. So, and we went into more depth what that means. And he tied it also, like you did, back into leader standard work. So knowing that you've worked with at least 3 distinct operations that you listed, is obviously GE was well indoctrinated into lean and continuous improvement and Six Sigma. Um, you've probably seen different levels of commitment. You don't have to mention company names, but I'm just interested in, where there was a stronger commitment or a stronger program or greater sustainability. What was different about that versus organizations where it sort of wasn't easy to sustain? It had a lot of fits and starts and, 2 steps forward, 1 step back sort of scenario. What were the distinguishing factors there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the greatest impactor to your success in a lean journey is going to be what your commitment and clarity is from your leadership, right? So for me, the biggest priority I've got is ownership and accountability, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I think about a lean transformation and how we become successful in it, it really starts with what's the clear vision from the leader and how involved with that execution are they, and their commitment to seeing it all the way through. Because
Mm-hmm.
what you're going to find is cultural transformation goes through, peaks and valleys, and you're going to see a deep valley before you're going to get really the peaks and really kind of sustained highs that you see out of the long-term value of lean. And so if you've got the right leadership commitment there, and it gives you the foundations as kind of the site or business leader, lean implementers, people who are out in the shops developing these, it gives you more of a platform to build off of and a foundation. And then from there is really having the commitment from your organization within the operation structure to get into daily management and really focus on what is the problem at the person closest to my customer. So if me as a plant person is focused on my operator base, and I'm focused on what do I need to do for them to solve problems for my customer, then I'm looking at skill set and uplifting my team, not solving problems for them, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really the sauce, is when you're focused on bringing the skill set of the everyday operator up and the problems getting solved at higher levels. That's where the real sustainability hits, because you can't solve everything.
Right. You tie in so many different aspects there, right? So the concept of servant leadership comes in because you're there saying, my job as leader isn't that people serve me. I serve them because they're serving the customer.
Mm-hmm.
It also, there's another model we've been playing with, and I'm not sure whether you and I talked about that before in one of our conversations, this idea of decision-making waste, which can occur when higher level leaders are making decisions or solving problems that really should be solved or owned by the people at the front line. And it sounds like you've wrestled that one down quite a bit by having the leaders at each level doing their standard work or doing the parts that they own, and otherwise there to remove obstacles or frustrations for other people. But can you comment on that?
Mm-hmm.
Because true active management in daily management at the front line means that cell leader really owns the output of that team, and management's role is really to support them. But that's easy to say. I think it's really hard for traditionally taught managers to live.
Yeah, so Greg, I think this is a really great place to be going. So when I look at how we communicate and what we teach our team members, I use one of the plants I walked into as a leader. I will use this for the rest of my life. Plant manager on the weekends he told me during interviews, such pride, and there is pride behind this, where he would get on the forklifts and would help the operators achieve the tasks on weekends and doing overtime and kind of getting really his hands dirty with the operator.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds great.
Yeah.
It sounds like I've got this really involved and interactive leader.
Yeah.
But the problem is it breaks down, because that leader, then, if I'm in a 500-person organization and my plant leader is on a fork truck,
Yeah.
then that means that he is not working on the strategy of the business during that time.
Right.
Right. And so So the challenge is you will never be more strategic than your leader.
Yeah.
So if your leader lives at 5,000 feet, that means that the most you can live at is maybe 2,500
Yeah.
feet because you can only get a bit of their perspective, right? So as you lift this up, then you start to get out of this firefighting mentality because as you break down those barriers, if I'm solving problems at 30,000 feet, another person at 15,000, my cell leaders are solving those 2,500-foot problems.
Yeah.
Now we start to see sustainable change, right? When we go in and we're always tactical, always firefighting, then we put these great containment measures in place to keep our customers satisfied, but we're going to take all of these costs and all of these stresses internally
Yeah.
that if we're not solving them at those higher levels, we end up just living with this until ultimately we're in a world of containment and we don't have control over our business.
Right. I think it's interesting because one of the topics in the Frontline Leadership Strength and Essentials program is just this concept of leading by example. And everyone thinks, well, leading by example is that you would want any leader at any level to not think any job was beneath them. And that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Like you do want to know that if there's a crisis or an emergency, people are going to be there to lend a hand and not sort of have the attitude of, well, that's beneath me. That's not really something I should do. But you're saying that might be fine in an instant or a moment, like a special situation. But if you're down there for any length of time, if it doesn't cause other people to go, I wonder why James is running the forklift instead of, running interference with the sourcing team or the purchasing team to make sure that we don't have those frustrations again down the road. They're like, we don't need you to do our job. We need you to do your job and do your job in a way that inspires us to do our job well. That's really what leading by example is. It's not just the fact that I ask you to stay late, so I work late. Hey, if I'm asking us all to work, the right amount of time, you want to know that I'm doing hard work on your behalf to make things better. You're doing hard work, to make the customer happy, right? So I think it's great to align that because I think a lot of hands-on leaders think, I'm doing a great service by swarming down and helping run the business. But we talk about, the frontline needs to run the business. The middle leaders need to improve the business and the senior leaders need to grow the business. And so I love how you phrased it as this strategic vision. I also had this thing as a private pilot myself where I'm thinking the low visibility. So if I'm the crew leader or the team leader at 2,500 feet, that's when the cloud deck might come in. And that's going to obscure the visibility for anyone above me anyway, who has the decision-making authority to come in and probably do almost anything, but doesn't have the true visibility of the problem that we're encountering. So even the solution will probably be heavy-handed or inappropriate or might help a little bit, but it's not the same as if you asked me what my frustration is and then help me eliminate the frustration. So I think it's really cool that more senior leaders have more clout, but the wielding of that clout inappropriately at a lower level may not actually add the value that they think it does, even though they can move mountains, right? What you want to do is have your system essentially get the mountains out of the way or deliver results despite those mountains. So no, thank you for saying that. I wondered, obviously we're in the leadership training business, but I also think you're in the leadership business, given what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see as those frontline sort of team leads, supervisors? What is it that you'd encourage them to do at their level that might be different from what they naturally think of? Or is it just the same as what a senior leader has to do when they get promoted from one level to another? I'm just trying to think, how do you help a supervisor become more effective at the role that they have?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it always starts with understanding the people that you're serving, right? So I was, again, my first experiences of my career, I was spoiled with opportunities, spoiled with coaching and development. So my operating manager told me my first month as a supervisor, I was not a supervisor, and my role was to shadow and understand my team, what makes them tick, not just as process, but as a team, right? So I want to understand really what those two intersections are because I need to be able to understand the depths of my process as a frontline leader and where my gaps are going to be, where inventory will pile up, where fallout will occur, where I'm going to have, tooling not be available that then leads to throughput coming down. right? I have to have a understanding of what those processes are in my area. But more importantly, I've got to understand how my people interact in that,
Hmm.
right? So if I'm focused on shadowing person by person and getting a really good understanding of my value stream,
Hmm.
now when I come out of this, I'm here to serve my team and I'm going to prioritize the biggest pain points first, right?
Yeah.
I basically have a month of Pareto development on where I'm going to focus my time and attention. And quite honestly, where does my team have gaps where I need to lift their skill set up so that they can solve problems with me and we can get this exponentially done rather than just through myself.
I know Pareto is a simple principle, but for anyone who sort of hears that word Pareto, it just means the 80-20 rule. And all James is saying is once you've spent that time gathering information, you start to sort out where the 20% of issues are that are causing 80% of the impact on your team's ability to
Precisely.
drive results. And that's just a great thing to keep in mind at all times is you're always searching for the 20% where you can make the biggest impact. And I like how you said that part of that is you can see the team's issues and the process issues. Then you can see where the team might need some additional strengthening, essentially, to become more capable at dealing with those high priority items that will drive their performance. And what I love again about that is it celebrates success, or it builds on success and makes them say, James, you're helping me be a winner. If you're my cell leader, you're helping me win. You're reducing my frustrations. I'm feeling like I have some say. You're helping me become a better process expert, which is also that would be the other thing I'd point out is that sometimes a leader feels like they have to be the chief troubleshooter and problem solver, but really their job is to ensure great troubleshooting and problem solving occurs, and of course root cause analysis and remediation. So I think people are maybe too eager to hold on to things and not really realize that they should let go of them. And when you let go of them, the team's going to perform better. I don't know whether you saw that in your own career path that
Mhm.
well, you did, I guess, in that first project you talked about, but I'm just wondering if you've seen that sort of bear fruit multiple times.
Yeah. I mean, the way I look at every role that I take on is how do I obsolete myself out of that role? I mean, even if I'm an ops supervisor, right, or somebody who has direct reports where I'm running the organization, right? How do I make it that I'm not necessary, right? If I'm doing my role effectively, then by the time I have been 2 years into it, the team should be able to successfully do my role or do the function around my area without me intervening,
Yeah.
right? My role is to enable, audit, and develop, right? So if I'm focused on what am I going to achieve this year and it's me,
Yeah.
then I'm going to achieve one or two things. If my goal is I'm going to figure out what I need to do to be unnecessary, then I'm going to be focused on 35 different people doing one or two things that I could be doing. And those 35 people go and do it. Now they're enabled to do it. They have new skill sets, they've got new opportunities, and we all start to share in this. And it really becomes this knowledge becomes rather than hoarding it and knowledge is power, knowledge is shared, it becomes exponential and you really start to accelerate what you're doing.
Did you get well, I totally buy into the into what you're saying. Did you get that just because you were surrounded by people that kept driving home that message? Because I would say that a lot of leaders are worried about making themselves redundant, almost like this fear of once I make myself redundant, the company can just let me go. Where in truth, people who are great at making themselves redundant are usually given different challenges. And those challenges aren't insurmountable because a lot of people say, I don't want to become a general manager. I don't want to be a site leader because they see that person as just having way more stress. But what people don't
Mm-hmm.
realize is that every level of leadership, you're really there to solve problems. So did you pick that up like just by being mentored and like how did you develop that sort of deep in your soul so you didn't have this fear that your redundancy would cause you to lose your employment, for example?
Yeah, so I think it really started with I when I launched one of my mentors was somebody who kind of had a mentality of he had already made it. He was working only to make an impact, right? So, and he still works today, and he's still the leader that I'll go to for any type of
Mhm.
advice because he does not have a care in the world about his positioning.
Yeah.
It is only what is right, right? And so he gave me a level of confidence when I started out in my career that as at 23, I bought into this. If I take a
Wow.
chance, the worst thing that's going to happen is somebody's going to say, "Hey, you did this."
Yeah.
Right? If I had integrity and I'm owning it, the worst thing that's going to happen if my intentions and my attitude are consistently in the right place, then I'm going to ultimately be taken care of. If
Yeah.
there's the right organization, the right structure, it's going to happen. Now, I could fall on my face and in a terrible structure, I lose my employment. And
Yeah.
I've seen that in the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah.
But that's what I am in my career feeling that I need to pay forward to actively combat every day and kind of coach and develop. This is the way that we empower and inspire people to become greater than they thought they could.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, and I'm sure you realize this because I think you have a high degree of self-awareness. I think you were very fortunate, not necessarily lucky, but you were fortunate to get that awakening at a fairly young age. I think it's something that people sometimes will get eventually, but they don't always
Mhm.
get it as early as you got it in your career. And that's great that you had that mentor. You've actually brought up mentorship a little bit in a couple of different cases. In our frontline leadership, we say, there's three main objectives in our training. One is to make you better, your capability, get more done with a little less stress. Two is, of course, make the operations better, make your company, better from a safety, quality, production level. The third thing is to make an impact on people that almost outlasts their time in working with you or for you. And then I'll ask people in the class, I'll go like, how many people have had a leader who, when you think back, in your career, you still think of that person in a positive way, even though it might have been 10, 15, 20 years earlier. And only, I'd say it's less than a quarter of the room has a person that comes to mind. So I always think I had that person. I know a
Wow.
couple of times in my career. You've obviously had that at least once, if not two or three times. Um, why is it that leaders maybe don't realize the power that they can have longer term?
So I think
I'm
that's a
asking you to
tragedy if that's
hypothesize.
the
Yeah, yeah,
so I think that's a tragedy if that's reality, but I think that's the gap in what we're doing as leaders today, right? We're not looking at like we have an opportunity, especially now where, you know, there's not community the same way there was 20 years ago today. And as a leader, we've got an opportunity to help build community around our people and give them a sense of, psychological safety, a sense of empowerment to do things that they're not used to doing or didn't know they're capable of,
yeah,
right? So as we look at how we're going to grow leadership and how we look at mentorship, one, it takes a lot of intention and it takes it at every level of the organization. But it also takes a commitment and discipline to say, I'm not going to solve your problems for you. I'm going to help you figure out how you solve problems, and I'm going to build an army with
yeah,
you, right? Rather than me, again, it all goes back to I can't solve every problem.
yeah.
So if I'm only focused on myself and what skill set I've got, I've failed. And that's the mentality I think is required. And that'll tell you who's your champion, who's your mentor, who's the person that's going to advocate for you in the room that you're not in, and who's going to give you opportunity on things that you haven't done before. Right? All of those types of people, you've got to be thinking about how can I proactively be developing in my network so that they can go out and advocate and do things for you so that you can build and have opportunity that you never thought you would.
This is pure gold, and probably almost negates the need for my question. But I always like to ask somebody. I mean, you're still, I'd say, well, compared to me, everybody seems younger. I used to be the young whippersnapper at one point, but let's say that you're dealing with somebody who's in their early 20s, and they're an engineer, maybe got a technical role. What advice would you give them to adopt early on in their career that will help them maybe beyond their wildest dreams 10, 20, and 30 years on in their career? What would that piece of advice be to the more technical engineering type, designer type, if you were giving them some advice?
Yeah, so I championed the early career development and leadership development programs where I'm at. So this is top of mind for me always. And honestly, it's do what you love and be sincere, right? So for me, one thing that team members will see is I'm going to be very blunt and honest with where I'm coming from. One thing, I have a really difficult time listening at times. And so I'll tell my team members, hey, I'm going to put my head down, close my eyes, and you may feel like I'm not going to listen to you, but then I'm going to respond to you in ways that you're going to know that I was listening, and I'm just asking you for a little bit of trust. So as you start to build trust with these people, it's just, all right, how do you just continue to build a little bit more trust that what we're talking about here and the way that, we're going to dive in, and it takes just a little bit of courage. 20 seconds of courage is all you need to get momentum going. And then you just continue and do the things that you love and that make you who you are, and be just sincere with it, and people will come along on your journey with.
Yeah, I think, that's great advice. I think you already know this since you brought up things that you love and that you're really passionate about and interested in. And we talk about there being kind of three circles that most of us live in, right? We have our circle of excellence, which are the things that we do well and bring us a lot of energy. So those would be the things that you love, right? And that you're good at. Then there's the circle of competence, which are things that you're good at, but you don't really love them. But you can execute, like you can complete the tasks. It just doesn't feed your soul with the energy. And then there's your circle of annoyance, which are the things that you're not really good at. Certainly it annoys you to have to do those things, and anyone observing you, as my wife would say, doing those annoyance tasks. So you're really talking about honing that circle of excellence and discovering it. But I'm always curious because although they say that your circle of excellence should actually have a thread of continuity almost from when you're a kid to all the way to you retire and beyond, I'm wondering, but it sometimes takes a while to chisel it away to get to the core of it. For you, what is it that partly from just talking to you, I think I know maybe what it is, but what is your unique, that circle of excellence, your unique ability there?
So I think my circle of excellence, the thing that I focus on more than anything is connecting with people and leading.
Yeah.
And my competence and my frustration is anything technical related, right? I am the engineer by experience, not by education.
Gotcha.
But really what I mean when I say do what you love, I am the worst artist in the world, but I love it. The idea about creating, I can go and create for hours, and I've got a ton up here. What comes out on paper is nothing like what I dreamed up.
Yeah.
So I try and hone different skills or different things about what you love can come out and manifest in different ways.
Yeah.
But it's always you said something there about what brings you energy.
Yeah.
Some people are going to be, when I'm challenged, I'm going to gain energy even though I feel tired in a moment. Yeah. But I ultimately was energized to go and do 12 hours of something when I historically was only, I burn out after 6.5.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. I think, well, first of all, you're doing one of the things that one of my circles of excellence is just curious conversations. So that's why I'm loving this. This is one of the highlights of my job. So, we've covered a lot of ground. I'm wondering, and by the way, we're talking with James Ott from Regal Rexnord. And you can, of course, check out Regal Rexnord, which is a very strong, sprawling company in the conveyance, motors, HVAC systems, etc. And that's regalrexnord.com. James Ott, of course, you can discover him on LinkedIn. James, is there anything else that you want to add that I haven't? I think we covered a lot of ground, but anything that you want to add before we wrap up our time together?
Yeah, I think if I was to kind of bring everything together from a frontline perspective, the thing that a frontline leader, as you're learning to lead and figure out your point in an organization, is, you might have manager in your title. And if you do, understand that is secondary. So your role is to lead your people, manage your manager, right? So, and what I mean by that is I'm going to enable, inspire, and empower my team to go and do what they need to fulfill our mission. And I'm going to manage my manager to break down any of the barriers that are keeping us from being successful. So if I don't have a tool or a resource or funding or capacity or whatever that gap is, and I've done my part in problem solving my way out, but I don't have something to go do and finish, then I've got to manage that manager to be effective. And that's my role as a leader, is to help develop, how do I pivot between those and manage up, lead down, and then organize across.
Oh, I love it. That's a great way to finish our talk together. That would almost open up another 30 minutes of questioning. So I think that's awesome. So again, thanks, James, for being on the podcast. I think people can see that you are very unique. And so I always think that sometimes I think you know a little bit of this, but you don't accept it from an ego perspective, which is probably healthy. You're very, I'd say of all the people that I've met, you're very unique in your ability to have learned all that and continue to demonstrate it. So keep up the good work, and thanks for being our guest today.
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity, Greg. This has been a ton of fun.
All right, so that brings us to the conclusion of another episode of the Accelerating Operational Performance podcast. And keep in mind that if our organization can help you, whether it's at the frontline leadership level with the team leads and supervisors in your organization, or lately we've been helping senior leaders at the plant manager level affect essentially what we were talking here on this episode with James about, which is just how do you make sure that you're providing the proper and effective leadership to your team so that they can deliver the results with the customer. So you can reach out to us, of course, at uniquedevelopment.com, and otherwise we just wish you well on your leadership journey.